Legacy Decision-Making: How to Choose Your Future Self Today. It's a complete audiobook. Right now, this exact moment, you are making a choice. Not just about what you're doing today, but about who you're becoming tomorrow. Most people make decisions based on today's comfort. They choose the easy path, the familiar path, the path that feels good right now. But comfort today is regret tomorrow. In the next 90 minutes, you're going to learn the mental model that changes everything. The framework that makes every single decision feel like you're investing in the person you're becoming, not just surviving the person you are. This isn't motivation. This is architecture. Welcome to Legacy Decision-Making. Chapter 1. The Comfort Trap: Why Your Present Self is Sabotaging Your Future. Self, you know what's happening right now, in this exact moment. Your future self is watching. They're watching the choices you're making. And here's what you need to understand. Every single choice you make today is a vote for who you're becoming, or a vote against them. Most people don't realize this. They think comfort is neutral. They think Netflix doesn't matter. They think one more day of sleeping in doesn't count. They think scrolling isn't really a choice. It's just what they do. But that's the trap. That's exactly how you sabotage yourself without even knowing it's happening. Here's the truth. Comfort today is the coffin of ambition tomorrow. Let that sink in. Not comfort next year. Comfort today. Right now. The comfort you're choosing in this moment is literally building the walls of a smaller future. And the worst part? You won't even notice it's happening until you look back and realize you've wasted years being comfortable. Part 1. The Immediate Gratification. Paradox. Let me paint a picture for you. Real simple. Imagine two people. Same age, same starting position, same potential. Person A wakes up. It's 6 a.m. They have a choice. They can get up, or they can hit snooze. They're comfortable in bed, warm, no friction, so they hit snooze. Just one more day. Person B wakes up at 6 a.m. Same comfort, same warmth, same friction, but they get up, one choice. That's it. Seems small, right? Now multiply that by 365 days. Person A has hit snooze 365 times. They've trained their identity to be the person who takes the easy path. Their brain has been reinforced, over and over, that comfort wins. And you know what they're thinking? I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be different. Except tomorrow, they make the same choice, and the next day, and the next. And now it's a year later. They're a year older. They have the same life, same body, same career, same everything, because comfort today built a prison of sameness. Person B? They woke up 365 times when it was hard. They trained their identity to be the person who does what matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Their brain has been reinforced over and over that they follow through. And now their entire life is different. That's not luck. That's not talent. That's the compounding power of choosing discomfort. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think this is about willpower. It's not. It's about understanding something foundational. Every comfortable choice today is a direct vote against your future self. When you choose Netflix over learning, you're not just relaxing. You're voting for the version of you that doesn't grow. When you choose scrolling over strategy, you're not just wasting time. You're actively training your identity to be small. When you choose avoidance over action, you're not just postponing. You're architecting a future where the hard things stay hard because you never practice them. You have a choice. But you need to understand what that choice actually costs. The person who sleeps in one more day doesn't lose one day. They lose the compounded effects of all the days they could have built momentum. They lose the morning productivity. They lose the sense of follow-through. They lose the identity of someone who means what they commit to. One snooze doesn't matter. 365 snoozes? That's a completely different human, and the tragedy is, they don't even see it happening. They just know they're tired. They just know they're not where they want to be. They just know something feels stuck. They don't connect it to the 1,000 small comforts they've chosen. Comfort today is the coffin of ambition tomorrow. I'm going to say that again because you need to hear it. Comfort today is the coffin of ambition tomorrow. Not someday, not eventually. Today, right now. The comfort you're choosing is literally sealing shut the possibility of who you could become. Part 2. The neuroscience of present bias now. Here's the thing. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't weakness. Your brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. You're wired, literally, neurologically wired, to prefer immediate pleasure over distant reward. This is evolution. Your brain is built to survive the next 24 hours, not to build a legacy 10 years from now. Your brain doesn't care about your goals. It cares about dopamine. Right now, scrolling gives you dopamine. Immediately, novelty hits, stimulation hits. Your brain releases the chemical that feels good, and your brain says, more of this. So you scroll again, and again, and again. Building something? Learning something new? Pushing your body in the gym? That dopamine comes much later. It's distant. It's theoretical. Your brain can't grab it. So your brain says, why would we do that when we can get dopamine right now? This is why so many people fail. They blame themselves. They think they're weak. They think they lack discipline. But that's missing the point. You can't blame your brain. You can only reprogram your choices. Your brain isn't your enemy. Your brain is following its operating system. But here's what you need to understand. That operating system is designed for survival, not for excellence. It's designed for today, not for tomorrow. And if you let your brain run the show, you will always choose comfort. Always. The difference between people who build extraordinary lives and people who don't isn't that they have different brains. It's that they understand this. They understand they can't fight their brain's preference for immediate reward, but they can redirect it. Here's how. You make the hard choice so many times that your brain eventually recognizes it as the comfortable choice. You wake up at 5 a.m. so many mornings that waking up at 5 a.m. becomes normal. Your brain stops fighting it. In fact, your brain starts preferring it because you've trained it to. The gym goer who started uncomfortable is now the person whose body rebels when they don't train. They wake up, and their body is literally asking for the movement, not because they're different, but because they reprogrammed what their brain recognizes as normal. The writer who started uncomfortable is now the person who feels wrong when they don't write. Not because writing became easy, but because they've trained their brain to expect it. That's the key. You're not fighting your brain forever. You're reprogramming it. And reprogramming takes repetition. It takes doing the hard thing until it's not hard anymore. It takes choosing discomfort until your brain learns that this is what you do. The person who doesn't understand this stays stuck in the immediate reward cycle forever. They get the dopamine hit of comfort today and the regret hit of stagnation tomorrow. And they wonder why they can't change. You can't blame your brain. You can only reprogram your choices. And that reprogramming starts with understanding. The dopamine hit from scrolling feels real. It is real, but it's a cheap hit. It's a quick high and a crash. The dopamine hit from building something feels distant. But when it arrives, it's sustainable. It's real. It's the kind of high that doesn't crash because it's connected to actual achievement, actual progress, actual identity. Choose the cheap hit today, and you get regret tomorrow. Choose the distant hit today, and you get momentum tomorrow. You have a choice. Part 3. The cost of staying comfortable. Let me tell you something that most people won't say out loud because it sounds harsh, but it's the only thing that matters. Comfort is a slow death. It doesn't announce itself as failure. It announces itself as not yet ready. Tomorrow you'll be ready. Next month you'll be ready. Next year you'll finally start. Meanwhile, everyone around you who was uncomfortable today is now operating at a level you didn't think possible. They're not smarter than you. They're not more talented. They're not from a better background. They just made a different choice. They chose discomfort, and now they're comfortable at a level that makes your current comfort look like a prison. Think about the last time you tried something new. The gym, a new language, a new skill. Remember how uncomfortable it was? You were the slowest in the room. You didn't know the terminology. You felt like you didn't belong. That discomfort is precisely what separates people who grow from people who don't. The person who pushes through that discomfort and keeps showing up. 6 months later, they're the strong one in the gym. 12 months later, they're the advanced one. 2 years later, they're the person everyone else is trying to emulate. They didn't get smart. They didn't get talented. They got comfortable with being uncomfortable. The person who avoids that discomfort, they're in the same place, still thinking about starting, still telling themselves they'll join next year. Comfort is the decision to remain ordinary. Discomfort is the decision to become exceptional. Let me repeat that. Comfort is the decision to remain ordinary. Discomfort is the decision to become exceptional. Not comfort might lead to being ordinary. Not comfort could result in being ordinary. Choosing comfort is literally the decision to remain ordinary. Because ordinary is what you get when you do what's easy. And here's the thing that really matters. The person who stays comfortable doesn't just stay where they are. They slowly lose ground. The world doesn't stay still. Opportunities don't stay still. Other people don't stay still. If you're not actively becoming exceptional, you're becoming obsolete. The person who was uncomfortable today and pushed through, they're now operating from a place of strength. They know they can do hard things. They know they can follow through. They know that discomfort is temporary, but the results are permanent. That knowledge changes everything. The person who stayed comfortable, they're now comfortable with mediocrity. They've trained their identity to accept the small version of themselves. And now the gap between who they want to be and who they are is so wide that it feels impossible to cross. You have a choice. Not eventually. Not when you're ready. Right now. You can stay comfortable, or you can become exceptional. But you can't do both. Here's what I need you to understand. Your present self isn't the enemy. Your present self is just making the choices that your past self trained them to make. If you're comfortable staying small, it's because you've trained your identity to be small. One snooze at a time, one scroll at a time, one avoidance at a time. But that can change. Today, right now. The next choice you make can be different. And the choice after that, and the one after that. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to start choosing discomfort. You need to start voting for your future self instead of against them. Comfort today is the coffin of ambition tomorrow. Remember that. Write it down. Say it when you want to hit snooze. Say it when you want to scroll instead of work. Say it when you want to stay in the familiar instead of stepping into growth. You've now seen the trap. You understand how comfort sabotages you. You understand how your brain is wired to betray your future, and you understand that it doesn't have to be this way. But understanding isn't enough. Knowing isn't change. The real question is, are you willing to be uncomfortable? Are you willing to choose the harder path? Are you willing to build a future that's worth the discomfort it takes to create? Because once you answer that question, once you decide that exceptional is worth more than comfortable, everything changes. Your choices change. Your identity changes. Your entire trajectory shifts, but that shift doesn't happen by accident. It happens by decision. It happens by repeatedly choosing discomfort when comfort is calling. You've just learned how the trap works. Now let's talk about who you're actually building when you make these choices. Because comfort isn't just about today. It's about the identity you're architecting. It's about the version of you that's waiting on the other side of your decisions. That's Chapter 2, the legacy question. Who do you want to be known for being? Chapter 2, the legacy question. Who do you want to be known for being? Most people are asking the wrong question, and that's why most people stay stuck. They wake up and they think, what do I want to achieve? Good question, but it's not the right question. Achievement is the consolation prize for people who don't understand what actually matters. Here's what I'm about to tell you will either transform your entire life, or it will confirm why you're staying small. Because the people who build extraordinary lives, they're not asking, what do I want to achieve? They're asking something completely different. They're asking, who do I want to become? That's the question that changes everything. Not what. Who? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Become the person first. The results are just what people see. Let that land. You don't chase results. You become the person who produces results. And once you're that person, results aren't something you're trying to get. They're just what you do. Part 1. Identity before income. Impact before ego. Let me tell you about two writers. Different backgrounds. Different circumstances. Both talented. Writer A asks, how do I write the perfect book? So they plan, they research, they wait until conditions are ideal. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the right time. They're trying to produce a result without becoming the person who produces results. And you know what happens? They never write the book because you can't chase a result that requires you to be a different person. Writer B asks, who do I need to become to be a writer? And their answer is simple. Someone who writes every single day. Not when it's perfect. Not when inspiration strikes. Every day. So they write badly at first. Inconsistently at first. But they write. They're not trying to produce a perfect book. They're trying to become the person who writes books. Fast forward 5 years. Writer A still hasn't written the book. They've perfected their outline. They've done more research. They've attended more workshops. But they haven't become a writer. They're still someone trying to write, not someone who writes. Writer B has written multiple books. Some good, some mediocre. But they're a writer now. Not because they wrote one perfect thing, but because they became the person who writes. And that person produces books like their body produces breath. It's not an achievement anymore. It's an identity, that's the key. You don't become a writer by writing the perfect book. You become a writer by becoming someone who writes every single day, regardless of outcome. Once you're that person, books are inevitable. Most people have this backwards. They think results create identity, but it's the opposite. Identity creates results. You don't get fit after you lose the weight. You get fit when you become someone who trains. You don't get rich after you make your first million. You get rich when you become someone who builds value. You don't get confident after you succeed. You get confident when you become someone who tries even when they might fail. Become the person first. The results are just what people see. This is why achievement-focused thinking is so dangerous. Because it keeps you focused on the external outcome when you should be focused on the internal identity. It's why so many people hit their goals and feel empty. They achieved the thing, but they didn't become the person. So the achievement sits there, and they're still the same version of themselves underneath. But when you focus on identity first, when you ask, who do I need to become, instead of what do I need to achieve, everything changes. The person who wants income asks, how do I make more money? The person who wants to build a life asks, who do I need to become to be someone that the market pays? One is transactional, one is transformational. The person who wants impact asks, how do I make a difference? The person who builds a legacy asks, who do I need to become to influence people with integrity? One is external, one is internal. You have a choice. You can chase results, or you can build identity. But you can't do both. Because the moment you're focused on results, you're focused on today's outcome. And the moment you're focused on identity, you're focused on who you're becoming. Those are different directions. The person who becomes someone is always more successful than the person who chases something. Because when you're someone, you don't stop when conditions get hard. You don't quit when results don't appear immediately. You keep going because you're not trying to achieve something. You're being someone. Part 2. The Deathbed Reversal. Testy wants you to do something right now. I want you to imagine yourself at 80 years old. You're at the end of your life. You're looking back, and you're asking yourself one question. What do I regret? Here's what I know. You're not going to regret the parties you didn't attend. You're not going to care about the money you didn't spend on status symbols. You're not going to think, man, I wish I had bought more stuff. Or, I really wish I had cared more about what people thought of me. Here's what you'll actually regret. The version of yourself you refuse to become. That's it. That's the regret that matters. Not what you did, who you refused to be. The person who stayed in the safe career for 40 years because it was secure and comfortable. You know what they regret at 80? Not the pension, not the stability, the version of themselves they never built, the entrepreneur they could have been, the risk-taker they refused to become, the person who would have looked back with pride instead of relief, the person who played small because it was easier. They don't regret the years of peace. They regret the version of themselves that's still alive inside them, dead. Your deathbed won't care about your comfort. It will only care about your courage. Think about that. Your deathbed, the moment your life ends. What do you think that moment cares about? Whether you were comfortable? Whether you stayed safe? Whether you made the smart financial decision? No. Your deathbed cares about whether you had the courage to become who you knew you could become. The person looking back at 80 years lived. They didn't just survive. They took the uncomfortable leap. They bet on themselves. They became someone they didn't know they could be. And yes, some of it didn't work out. Some of the risks didn't pay off. Some of the attempts failed. But they tried. They became. They lived. Your deathbed won't care about your comfort. It will only care about your courage. Now here's the thing that changes this from inspiration to action. This isn't theoretical. This isn't some motivational concept floating in the abstract. This is about the decision you're making right now. Today, every choice you make is a choice about who you're becoming. The safe choice is a choice to be someone who plays it safe. The uncomfortable choice is a choice to be someone who has the courage to build. You can't be both. You can't be safe and exceptional. You can't stay comfortable and become legendary. You have a choice, but you need to understand. The choice you make today is a choice about what version of yourself you're creating for your deathbed. The person at 80 who regrets their comfort made the choice to be comfortable at 30. At 40, at 50. They stacked those choices, and now they're staring at a life they didn't build. The person at 80, who has no regrets, made the uncomfortable choice at 30. At 40, at 50, they stacked those choices, and now they're looking back at a life they designed. Which version are you building? Right now, this choice. today. This is the moment that matters. Part 3. Legacy isn't about fame, it's about consistency. Here's what most people get wrong about legacy. They think it's about doing one big thing, one massive achievement, one moment that defines everything. It's not. Legacy is built in the moments no one sees. It's the 5 a.m. morning when you wake up and nobody knows you did it. It's the decision to keep your promise to yourself when nobody's watching. It's the choice to do the hard thing when you could do the easy thing and nobody would know the difference. That's where legacy is actually built. The person who keeps promises to themselves in private, that's the person who keeps promises to others in public. The person who's disciplined when nobody's watching, that's the person who's disciplined when everyone is. The person who does the hard work in the background, that's the person who has something worth showing in the foreground. Your legacy is written by the decisions no one sees. Your reputation is written by the decisions everyone does. Let me break that down. Your legacy, who you actually are, is built through the 1,000 private choices. The workouts nobody sees. The hours of learning nobody witnesses. The moments of integrity when you could have cut a corner and nobody would have known. That's your legacy. That's who you're actually becoming. Your reputation is what people observe from your legacy. Nobody sees the 1,000 hours of work. They see the result. They see the outcome. They see what a person who made 1,000 good private choices produces in the world. That's your reputation. Most people have this backwards. They try to build a reputation without building a legacy. They try to look good without becoming good. They try to seem disciplined without being disciplined. And it never works, because a reputation built on anything other than actual legacy is a house built on sand. But the person who builds their legacy first, the person who commits to doing the hard work in private, their reputation isn't something they have to manage. It's just the natural result of who they actually are. Think about the people you respect most, the ones you actually want to be like. I'm willing to bet they're not the people with the biggest social media following or the most impressive title. They're the people who do what they say they're going to do. They're the people who are the same in private as they are in public. They're the people who kept their promises when it was hard. That's legacy, not fame, not recognition, consistency. The person who shows up at 5 a.m. when nobody's watching is building legacy. The person who does the work even when it won't be acknowledged is building legacy. The person who keeps their word to themselves is building legacy. And that legacy compounds. It compounds in your own confidence. It compounds in how you carry yourself. It compounds in the life you build. And here's what's wild. Nobody has to see it for it to matter. Your legacy doesn't need witnesses, but your reputation. What flows from your legacy that becomes inevitable. Because a person with a strong internal legacy produces undeniable external results. People notice. Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because consistency is impossible to hide. Your legacy is written by the decisions no one sees. Your reputation is written by the decisions everyone does. So the question isn't, how do I build a reputation? The question is, who do I need to become in private? Because the reputation will follow automatically. Closing and transition, you've now asked yourself the right question. Not, what do I want to achieve, but who do I want to become? That shift changes everything. Because now your focus is on identity, not outcomes. Now your focus is on the person you're building, not the results you're chasing. Now your focus is on showing up consistently in private, knowing that your public reputation will be the inevitable result. Become the person first. The results are just what people see. Remember that. When you're trying to decide whether to do the hard thing or the easy thing, remember, you're not deciding what to do. You're deciding who to become. And that decision matters more than any single outcome. The person at 80 with no regrets? They became someone. They didn't chase something. They became the person their future self needed them to be. Now you understand the legacy question. You understand that identity precedes results. You understand that consistency in private becomes reputation in public. But understanding who you want to become isn't enough. You need to understand how to actually make those choices. How to decide every single day in a way that builds toward that person. Because here's the reality. You don't become someone by accident. You become someone through a specific mental model. A framework that makes every choice clear. That makes every decision feel like an investment in the person you're becoming. That's what we're talking about next. You've asked who you want to become. Now let's talk about how to choose like that person every single day. Because deciding and choosing are different things. Deciding is a moment. Choosing is a practice. That's Chapter 3. The decision architecture, the mental model that changes everything. Chapter 3. The decision architecture, the mental model that changes everything. Now. You know who you want to become. You've asked the right question. You understand that legacy matters more than comfort. But knowing isn't doing. Understanding isn't acting. So here's what separates people who transform their lives from people who just think about transforming their lives. They have a framework. A specific, repeatable mental model that makes every single decision clear. Most people don't have this. So every decision feels ambiguous. Every choice feels like a gamble. And when every choice feels uncertain, you default to what's familiar, which is comfort, which is small. But what if you had a decision-making architecture? What if every time you faced a choice, you already knew exactly what to do? Not because you're disciplined, but because you could see it clearly. That's what this chapter is about. This is the mental model that changes everything. Part 1. Future Self. Visibility. The psychological breakthrough. Here's the scientific reality. People who can clearly see their future self make radically different decisions in the present. Not people who think about their future self. Not people who have goals written down. People who can viscerally see, feel, and recognize their future self as a real, already existing person. This is the breakthrough. And most people miss it entirely. When you're about to make a choice, say, whether to work on your business or watch Netflix, you don't need more willpower. You don't need more motivation. You need to see something. You need to see the version of yourself that made the harder choice. Close your eyes right now. Don't actually close them. You're listening. But imagine you're closing them. Picture yourself 6 months from now, not as a fantasy, as an already real person, someone who made the uncomfortable choice today, someone who did the work when it was hard. Someone who kept the promise to themselves. What does that version look like? What does that version feel like? How does that version carry themselves? What's different about them? That's future self-visibility. And once you have it, your present choices become obvious. Here's a real example. An entrepreneur is sitting in a meeting. They have an opportunity to pitch to a major investor. It's terrifying. Their hands are shaking. Their brain is screaming at them not to do it. This is too much, too risky, too exposed. But here's what's different about this entrepreneur. They can see themselves as the confident CEO who takes this meeting. Not someday, right now, in this moment. They can viscerally feel what it's like to be the version of themselves that's already comfortable with this level of play. And because they can see that person, they make the choice that person would make. They pitch. The person who can't see that future version, they make the choice that the scared version of themselves would make. They decline. They wait for a better time. They protect themselves. And 6 months later, they're still waiting. You can't become what you can't see. See yourself first. Everything else follows. This isn't mystical. This isn't positive thinking. This is neuroscience. Your brain can't navigate toward something it can't see. So if you can't see your future self, your brain defaults to protecting your present self. And protecting your present self means staying small. But the moment you can see, viscerally, vividly see, the version of yourself that made the brave choice, Your brain has a target. Your brain knows where it's navigating toward. Suddenly, the uncomfortable choice isn't random. It's a step towards someone who's already real to you. The person who writes books doesn't start by writing a book. They start by seeing themselves as someone who writes, viscerally seeing it. Then they write, because that's what that person does. The writer doesn't surprise themselves by becoming a writer. They recognize they finally became the person they could already see. You can't become what you can't see. See yourself first. Everything else follows. This is the first layer of the architecture. Before you make the decision, see the person who made it. Not as aspiration, as inevitability. As someone who's already waiting for you to catch up to them. Part 2. The 3-layer decision framework. Now let's get specific. Because once you can see your future self, you need a framework to evaluate every choice through their eyes. Here it is. Every single decision happens on 3 layers. And most people only see one. Layer 1, the immediate. How does this feel right now? Does it feel good? Does it feel comfortable? Is this the easy path? This is where 99% of people make their decisions. Immediate comfort, immediate pleasure, immediate ease. That's it. That's the entire decision tree. Does this feel good right now? If yes, they do it. If no, they don't. That's why people stay stuck. That's why people choose Netflix over work. That's why people sleep in instead of building. Because the immediate layer always favors comfort. But here's what changes when you understand the 3-layer framework. Layer 2, the intermediate. Who are you becoming in the next 30 days based on this choice? This is where most people wake up. When they realize that the comfortable choice today isn't just neutral, it's actively building the wrong version of themselves. Skip the workout today. Feels good on layer 1, but on layer 2, what's happening? You're becoming someone who doesn't keep promises to themselves. You're someone who chooses comfort when discomfort matters. You're someone who's training their identity to be small. In 30 days, you're 30 repetitions of that choice away from being someone fundamentally different. Do the workout. Feels hard on layer 1, but on layer 2, you're becoming someone who follows through. You're someone who's building their body intentionally. You're someone whose identity is strengthening. In 30 days, you're 30 commitments deeper into becoming someone exceptional. Every choice is a 3-layer decision. Only the unconscious choose based on one. But here's where it gets powerful. Layer 3, the legacy. Who are you in 30 years based on the accumulated weight of these choices? This is where most people never look, because it's too far away, too abstract, too easy to ignore. But this is the layer that actually matters. Skip 1,000 workouts. In 30 years, you're the person whose body has deteriorated, whose confidence has eroded, whose potential has atrophied, whose life is built on a foundation of broken promises to yourself. Do 1,000 workouts. In 30 years, you're the person whose body is strong, whose mind is sharp, whose confidence is unshakable, whose entire life is built on the foundation of kept promises. That's not coincidence. That's the compounded result of seeing all 3 layers. That's the key. Most people wonder why their life doesn't match their dreams. It's because they're only seeing layer 1. They're making decisions based on immediate comfort and wondering why they're not building legacy. But when you see all 3 layers simultaneously, the choice becomes obvious. Not because you're more disciplined, but because you can see the cost of the comfortable choice and the reward of the hard choice across the entire timeline of your life. Skip the workout layer by layer. Intermediate, small person. Legacy, broken person. That's what you're choosing. You can see it now. Do the workout layer by layer. Intermediate, someone who's strengthening. Legacy, someone who's unshakable. That's what you're choosing. Once you see both, which one would you choose? Every choice is a 3-layer decision. Only the unconscious choose based on one, become conscious. See all 3 layers, and the correct choice becomes inevitable. Part 3. The inversion principle. Decide by elimination now. Here's the framework that makes all of this practical. Because seeing your future self and understanding the 3 layers is powerful, but you still need a decision-making tool that's immediate. That works in the moment. It's called the inversion principle. Instead of asking, what should I do? Ask, what would the small version of myself do? Then, commit to doing the opposite. This is more powerful than you realize. Because chasing who you want to become is abstract, but rejecting who you refuse to be is concrete, the small version of yourself. You know exactly who that is. They're the version that's been making choices your whole life. The version that chose comfort. That chose ease. That chose familiar small self wakes up at 6 a.m. and hits snooze. Evolved self gets up. Small self sees a chance to do something. Brave and talks themselves out of it. Evolved self does it. Anyway, small self spends the evening scrolling and feeling productive. Evolved self builds something. Small self complains about circumstances, and evolved self changes them. Small self blames the world for their problems. Evolved self takes responsibility. Here's the thing. You already know what small self does. You've been small self your entire life. You know their moves. You know their excuses. You know their defaults. So the decision becomes simple. Ask yourself, what would small self do right now? Then refuse it. Automatically. You don't build greatness by chasing it. You build it by refusing to accept the small version of yourself. This is profound because it flips the energy. Instead of pulling yourself towards something difficult, you're rejecting something familiar, and rejection is often easier than attraction. The person who tries to become great through willpower and motivation is exhausted. They're constantly trying to add something new, achieve something harder, be someone different. It's hard. It's draining. The person who becomes great through rejection, they're not exhausted. They're just disgusted with the small version. They see small self trying to make a choice and they say, no, that's not who I am anymore. That's not motivation. That's identity. And identity is sustainable. Think about it. If someone offers you junk food and you don't eat it because you're disciplined, that's hard. You're using willpower. But if you don't eat it because you're someone who's committed to their health, that's not hard. That's automatic. The person who builds identity through rejection doesn't have to choose every time. They just know who they've rejected being. You don't build greatness by chasing it. You build it by refusing to accept the small version of yourself. So here's the practice. Every time you face a choice, here's what you do. First, see your future self. See the version who made the harder choice, visceral, real, already waiting. Second, see the 3 layers, immediate, intermediate, legacy. What's the full impact of this choice across my entire timeline? Third, invert. Ask, what would small self do? Then refuse it. Not because you're forcing yourself to be great, but because you're rejecting the small version you refuse to remain. That's the architecture. That's the framework that makes every decision clear. Closing and transition, you now have the mental model. You have the tool. This isn't inspiration. This is infrastructure. Every choice you make from this moment forward, you can run it through this architecture. See your future self. See the 3 layers. Reject small self. The decision becomes obvious. You can't become what you can't see. See yourself first. Everything else follows, and every choice is a 3-layer decision. Only the unconscious choose based on one, and you don't build greatness by chasing it. You build it by refusing to accept the small version of yourself. Write those down. Memorize them, because these are the frameworks that change how you decide. But here's what happens next. You start making better choices. You feel the power of the architecture. You see your future self getting closer. And then you hit something unexpected. You hit resistance. Not external resistance, internal resistance. The part of you that still wants comfort. The part of you that still wants permission. The part of you that's waiting for the right conditions before you commit. That's not weakness. That's the next layer of the work, because you can't just keep making good choices and expect the world to support you. You have to learn how to stop waiting for conditions that never come. You have to learn how to move without permission. You have to understand that readiness is a trap. That's Chapter 4. Stop waiting for permission. The decision trap of conditional readiness. Chapter 4. Stop waiting for permission. The decision trap of conditional readiness. You're waiting right now. In this moment, you're waiting for something. Permission, readiness, the right time, the right conditions, the right feeling. And while you're waiting, someone else isn't. Someone with fewer resources, less experience, less advantage. They're moving, and now they're ahead of you. This is the single biggest killer of potential in the world. Not lack of talent, not lack of intelligence, not even lack of resources. It's this, waiting for permission. You've been trained your entire life to wait. Get the degree first, then you can work. Get the job title first, then you can lead. Get the approval first, then you can move. And by the time you've collected all the permissions and credentials and validation you think you need, someone else already started and they're years ahead. Here's what I need you to understand. You don't get ready, you get started. Then readiness follows like a faithful dog. That's not motivation. That's how the world actually works. And until you accept this, you will keep waiting. You will keep delaying. And you will keep watching people who are less talented, less prepared, and less credentialed pass you by because they had one thing you didn't have: the willingness to start before they were ready. Part 1. Readiness is an illusion sold by your fear. Let me be harsh with you for a moment, because you need to hear this. Readiness doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. It's a beautiful, compelling, perfect fantasy that your fear invented to keep you safe. You're not waiting to feel ready. You're waiting because you're afraid, and fear disguises itself as readiness. Fear says, I'll start when I have more money. That's not caution. That's fear using money as an excuse. Fear says, I'll start when I'm more confident. That's not prudence. That's fear using confidence as a shield. You don't get ready. You get started. Then readiness follows like a faithful dog. Think about every person you know who's accomplished something real. Ask them, did you feel ready when you started? I guarantee you the honest answer is no. The writer didn't feel like a writer. They felt terrified. But here's the difference. They wrote anyway. And through the act of writing, through the action of doing the thing, they became ready. Readiness followed. It was always going to follow, but it never would have come if they waited for it first. The entrepreneur didn't feel like a business owner. They felt like an imposter, like they were faking it, like they had no idea what they were doing. All of those things were true. But they started anyway, and through the act of running the business, they became ready. They learned, they adapted, they grew. And now readiness isn't something they're chasing. It's something they have because they did the thing first. This is the mechanism that people miss. Readiness isn't a prerequisite. It's a byproduct. You don't become ready and then act. You act and then become ready. Real example. The person waiting to feel like a writer keeps waiting. They read books about writing. They take courses. They outline their novel. They research literary agents. And they still don't feel ready. They still don't feel like a real writer. So they keep waiting. 5 years later, they're still not a writer because they never actually wrote. Meanwhile, the person who started writing before they felt ready, who was terrified, who didn't know if they were good, they wrote anyway. Badly at first, inconsistently at first, but they wrote. And after 1,000 pages of bad writing, something shifted. They stopped waiting to feel like a writer, and they became one. Not through confidence. Through action, you don't get ready. You get started. Then, readiness follows like a faithful dog. Here's the reality. Every single person who's done something significant felt unready when they started. They all felt it. The fear was real. The doubt was real. The sense of, I have no idea what I'm doing was absolutely real. But here's what was different about them. They moved anyway. They understood something that most people never figure out. Readiness is a dog, and dogs don't lead. Dogs follow. If you wait for readiness to lead, you'll wait forever. But if you start moving, readiness will catch up. It always does. The gap between the person who feels ready and the person who starts is just one decision. One moment where you say, I'm not ready, but I'm going anyway, and that's it. That's the difference. Not talent, not preparation. One decision to move before feeling ready. Part 2. Permission is an inside job. Now let's talk about something more insidious than just waiting to feel ready. Let's talk about waiting for permission. You've been programmed your entire life to wait for external validation. Someone else has to give you permission. Someone else has to approve. Someone else has to validate you before you can move. Your parents, your teachers, your boss, society, the algorithm. Some external authority figure has to look at you and say, yes, you're good enough. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you have my permission to become. And while you're waiting for that permission, the person who didn't wait is already living the life you wanted. Permission granted. You authorized yourself the moment you decided who you want to become. That's it. That's the entire framework. The person you're becoming doesn't need anyone's permission but their own. The entrepreneur doesn't need the bank's permission to start. The writer doesn't need the publisher's permission to write. The artist doesn't need the gallery's permission to create. The person becoming exceptional doesn't need the world's permission to change. But here's what happens. You wait. You wait for the degree. Then you'll be credible. You wait for the job title. Then you'll be legitimate. You wait for the social proof. Then you can move. You wait for someone in authority to validate you. Then you'll be worthy. Meanwhile, someone else skipped all of that. Someone else said, I don't have a degree, but I have skills. I can start learning. Someone else said, I don't have the title, but I have the work ethic. I can start building. Someone else said, I don't have the validation, but I have the decision. I'm becoming this anyway. And now that person is years ahead. Not because they were more talented, but because they didn't waste years waiting for permission that was never going to come from anyone but themselves. Real example. Person A goes to business school, gets the degree, waits until they have a title, waits until the conditions are right, waits for investor approval. 5 years pass. They finally start their business. Then they realize they're years behind Person B. Person B didn't have any of that. No degree in business, no impressive title, no credentials. But Person B had something more valuable. They didn't wait for permission. They started with $500 and a determination to figure it out. They made mistakes. They learned fast. They adapted. They grew. And by the time Person A finally had all the permissions and credentials they thought they needed, Person B already had a thriving business and years of experience. Who do you think is winning now? Permission granted. You authorized yourself the moment you decided who you want to become. The person who understands this doesn't spend their life chasing external validation. They spend their life building internal evidence. Every day you move without permission is a day you're strengthening your internal authority. Every day you do the thing without waiting for approval. You're proving to yourself that you're the only permission you need. And here's what's wild. Once you have that internal authority, external validation becomes automatic. Once you have the work and the evidence and the results, permission comes looking for you. But you can't chase external permission while ignoring internal authority. That path leads nowhere. You have a choice. You can wait for someone to give you permission, or you can give it to yourself. Every single day you wait for someone else's permission is a day someone else didn't wait. Every single day you delay is a day they moved ahead. The gap compounds, the disadvantage multiplies, and then 5 years later, you're wondering how they got so far ahead so fast. They didn't. You just didn't start. Part 3. The cost of conditional decisions. I'm going to give you a phrase to remember. It's going to haunt you if you let it. I'll start when. That phrase is the graveyard of potential. It's where dreams go to die. It's the most dangerous conditional decision you can make. I'll start when I have more money. I'll start when I lose the weight. I'll start when I finish this course. I'll start when I find the right partner. I'll start when the economy improves. I'll start when I feel more confident. I'll start when. And here's the truth. The when never comes. It's a moving target. You hit one condition and another one appears. You get the money and suddenly you need more. You lose the weight and now you need more time. You finish the course and now you need better circumstances. The when is infinite because it's not about conditions. It's about fear disguising itself as prudence. But here's what actually happens. The person who starts with $500 figures out how to be resourceful. Constraints force clarity. Limitations force innovation. Disadvantages force creativity. The person with $50,000 who hasn't started, they're still waiting. They're waiting for that perfect moment when they have everything they need. And that moment never comes. When is a question disguised as a decision? When is how you delay who you're becoming? Think about it. Every time you say, I'll start when, you're not making a decision. You're avoiding one. You're asking a question that has infinite answers. When becomes the excuse that protects you from starting now. Real example. The entrepreneur with limited capital starts lean. They make every dollar count. They learn to market creatively. They learn to sell. They learn to move fast. They learn to operate under pressure. These constraints build skills that money can't buy. They build resilience. They build problem solving. They build the capacity to do more with less. The entrepreneur with abundant capital, they're still planning. They're still waiting for the perfect moment to launch. They're still optimizing the business plan. They're still waiting for the market to be exactly right. And by the time they launch, the lean startup has 3 years of experience and a customer base and momentum. Who's more prepared? The person who learned by doing or the person who learned by planning? You don't need perfect conditions. You need to start. You don't need all the money. You need the willingness to move with what you have. You don't need to feel ready. You need to take the first step and become ready through action. When is a question disguised as a decision? When is how you delay who you're becoming? The most dangerous game you can play is the conditional game. Because conditional decisions are infinite. There will always be another condition. There will always be another reason to wait. There will always be another excuse that feels legitimate. But here's the reality. Time is the only resource that's actually finite. You can make more money. You can get more education. You can gather more resources. But you can't make more time. Every moment you wait for conditions that never come is a moment that's gone forever. It's a moment that someone else used to build. The cost of when is your life, your potential, your legacy, your future self looking back and wondering what would have happened if you hadn't waited. You have a choice. You can keep waiting for permission, for readiness, for conditions, or you can start now with what you have, imperfectly, unsure of yourself, without all the credentials and validation and certainty. You can start anyway, and that one choice, to start now instead of waiting, is the difference between a life built and a life postponed. Closing in transition, you now understand the trap. Readiness is a dog that follows, not a leader that leads. Permission is internal, not external. And when is a question that keeps you stuck forever. You don't get ready. You get started. Then readiness follows like a faithful dog, permission granted. You authorized yourself the moment you decided who you want to become. When is a question disguised as a decision? When is how you delay who you're becoming? Write these down. Because every time you're about to wait, these phrases will cut through the noise. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've stopped waiting for readiness. You've stopped playing the conditional game. Now you're moving. And movement creates something powerful. Movement creates momentum. And momentum is where magic actually happens. Because here's what most people don't understand. You don't need to understand everything before you start. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to move. And once you move, something shifts. You start learning. You start growing. You start building momentum. And momentum is the force that carries you to places you couldn't reach by waiting. But momentum doesn't appear out of nowhere. Momentum is built through something specific. It's not built through perfect decisions. It's built through accumulated small choices. It's built through consistency. It's built through showing up and doing the thing over and over until the individual actions compound into something undeniable. That's what we talk about next. How small decisions compound into an unrecognizable life. How one choice repeated becomes your destiny. That's Chapter 5. The accumulation effect, one small decision. Compounds into an unrecognizable life, Chapter 5. The accumulation effect 1. Small decision compounds into an unrecognizable life. You are probably thinking right now, one decision won't matter. One morning won't change anything. One workout. One page read. One choice. What's the difference? You're absolutely right. One doesn't matter. But here's what you're missing. You're not making one decision. You're making 1,000. You're not living one morning. You're living 365. And that's where everything changes. Most people understand compound interest in finance. They get it mathematically. $1 compounds into thousands over time. Exponential growth. Everyone nods and agrees. Yes, compound interest is powerful, but then they completely miss it in their own life. They think one choice doesn't matter. One day doesn't matter. One small decision is insignificant. And technically they're right. One is insignificant. But 1 times 365 is your entire life. Here's the truth that changes everything. Small decisions feel insignificant until they don't. Then they feel like destiny. That's not poetry. That's how transformation actually works. That's the mechanism behind every person who's ever become unrecognizable. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 tiny decisions that compounded into a completely different human. Part 1. 1% better is a different life trajectory. Let me give you the math. And I need you to really sit with this because this is where everything clicks. 1% better than yesterday. That's barely noticeable, right? You wake up 1% more disciplined. You work 1% harder. You focus 1% more intensely. It's marginal. It's invisible. One day nobody would see it. But compound that 1% daily improvement for a year. 165 times. And here's what happens. You're 37 times better. Not 37%. 37 times. 3,700%. That's not linear growth. That's exponential. That's the difference between ordinary and unrecognizable. But most people don't think in compounding. They think in destinations. They think, I need to be fit, so they go hard for a week. Then they stop. They think, I need to be disciplined, so they white-knuckle it for a few days. Then they collapse. They're not thinking in 1% daily. They're thinking in all or nothing. And all or nothing doesn't compound. It explodes and fizzles. Let me paint this a different way. Person A wakes up every single morning and reads 10 pages. That's it. 10 pages. Not a book. 10 pages. It takes maybe 15 minutes. Nothing revolutionary. But they do this consistently. In 1 year, they've read 3,650 pages. That's roughly 12 to 15 books. Full books. In a single year. That's not a coincidence. That's compound reading. Person B doesn't read. They tell themselves they should. They say, I'll read more, but they don't actually read. Maybe they read 30 pages all year. Maybe. Now jump forward 10 years. Person A has read 150 books. Conservatively, they've lived 1,000 lives through books. They've accumulated knowledge across disciplines, history, psychology, biology, philosophy. They've seen patterns repeat across centuries. They understand human nature. They understand strategy. They understand what actually works because they've read about what's worked throughout history. Person B is the same person they were 10 years ago. Same knowledge. Same understanding. Same perspective. Stationary. Who do you think is winning? Who's more equipped to navigate complexity? Who's making better decisions? The difference isn't that person A is smarter. The difference is person A compounds. They understand that 10 pages a day isn't the achievement. The achievement is what 10 pages times 3,750 becomes over time. Small decisions feel insignificant until they don't. Then they feel like destiny. This is why most people fail at transformation. They don't understand compounding. They see the small decision and think, this won't matter. And they're right. This one won't. But they're not thinking about the 1,000. The person who works out once thinks, this one workout won't make me fit. True. But the person who works out 365 times, that's a completely different human. That's not the same person with muscles. That's a fundamentally different person with different confidence, different body, different energy, different everything. The person who eats healthy once doesn't transform their health. But the person who eats healthy 1,000 times, their body has literally rebuilt itself at the cellular level. That's not a diet. That's a rebirth. That's the key. Every single small decision is a vote. Not just for what you're doing today, but for who you're becoming. And when you cast that vote 365 times, it's not a vote anymore. It's an identity. The person who wakes up early 365 times isn't someone who likes waking up early. They're someone who's structurally early. It's who they are. The person who writes every day isn't someone who tries to write. They're someone who writes. The person who learns consistently isn't someone who reads. They're someone who's learned. That's not description. That's identity. And here's what shifts everything. Once it's identity, you don't have to choose anymore. You don't have to decide whether to wake up early. That's what you do. You don't have to decide whether to write. That's who you are. The decision becomes irrelevant because the behavior becomes automatic. That's the compounding effect. You make the small decision repeatedly until it becomes identity. Then you don't make decisions anymore. You just live as that person. Part 2. The invisible threshold. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because there's a moment where something shifts. Not a moment everyone sees, but a moment that's absolutely real. It's called the threshold. And the threshold is when accumulated small decisions suddenly become visible transformation. You're making the small decisions. Day after day. Week after week. Nobody's noticing. The person in the mirror doesn't look that different yet. Your life hasn't visibly changed. You're still living the same external life. You still have the same job, same apartment, same relationships. But something's shifting internally. And then, somewhere around the 1,000th small decision, or the 10,000th step, or the 365th morning, something clicks. A line is crossed. A threshold is breached. Suddenly, you're not trying to be fit anymore. You're a fit person. Not trying, being. You're not trying to be disciplined anymore. You're a disciplined person. It's just what you are. You're not trying to be successful anymore. You're a successful person. Not because you've hit some external achievement, but because you've made so many aligned decisions that success is now your default. Thresholds aren't moments. They're invisible lines you cross through 1,000 small steps. Then suddenly you're on the other side and you never go back. Here's the wildest part. Most people don't notice it happening. The world doesn't notice. Your friends might notice something's different about you, but they can't pinpoint it. They just know you seem more confident, more certain, like you know something they don't. But you know exactly what's happening. You've crossed a threshold. You've made 1,000 uncomfortable decisions, and now discomfort is just normal for you. You've shown up consistently for 365 days. And now consistency is just how you operate. Real example. The person who has made 1,000 uncomfortable decisions has fundamentally rewired themselves. They've crossed the threshold. They're not someone who's learning to be brave anymore. They're someone who's brave, not because they feel brave, but because they've proven it to themselves 1,000 times. The person who hasn't crossed that threshold yet is still trying. They're still in the grinding phase. They're still white-knuckling it. They're still negotiating with themselves about whether this is worth it. They're still at the point where every decision feels hard. But the person on the other side of the threshold? For them, not deciding would feel wrong. Stopping would feel unnatural. They've rewired so deeply that the behavior is now the path of least resistance. The small decision has become identity. And here's what's crucial. The person watching from outside doesn't see the 1,000 steps. They don't see the invisible line being crossed. They only see the result. They look at the person and think, wow, they're so disciplined. They're so fit. They're so successful. They're looking at someone who's crossed the threshold and they're assuming it happened suddenly, but it didn't. It happened invisibly, through 1,000 small decisions that nobody was watching. The threshold crossing is private. The result is public. You have a choice. You can stay where you are and keep trying, or you can commit to crossing the threshold. And the only way to cross is through accumulated small decisions. There's no shortcut. There's no moment where you suddenly arrive. You cross through 1,000 steps, invisibly, until suddenly you're on the other side. Part 3. Momentum is built, not found. Now let me tell you something that will completely change how you think about motivation. Motivation is temporary. It's a feeling. It fluctuates. Monday morning, you feel motivated. You're going to change everything. You're going to be better. You're going to commit. You feel it in your chest. You feel invincible. Wednesday, that feeling is gone. Life happens. Something's hard. Something's not working. And suddenly, that motivation that felt so real on Monday is completely gone. Most people treat motivation like it's the fuel. They think, if I can just keep my motivation up, I'll keep going. But that's a trap, because motivation will always fail you. It always does. You can't run your life on a feeling that's designed to be temporary. Here's what actually works. Momentum. Momentum is different. Momentum isn't a feeling. Momentum is built. It's constructed through repeated action. And once momentum exists, it's unstoppable. Motivation says, I feel like working out today. Momentum says, I'm the person who works out. It's what I do. The athlete who relies on motivation works out when they feel good. So they work out twice a week. Maybe, when they're feeling it. When the stars align, the athlete who builds momentum works out regardless of how they feel. Rain or shine, tired or energized, motivated or not. They work out because they're the person who works out. And that consistency builds momentum. And momentum carries them through the days when motivation has completely abandoned them. Motivation is temporary. Momentum is permanent. Build momentum and motivation becomes optional. This is the difference between people who transform and people who try and fail. The people who transform don't rely on motivation. They don't wait to feel like it. They build momentum through consistent choice, and that momentum sustains them when conditions get hard and motivation disappears. Think about the person who's been working out for 5 years consistently. Do you think they're motivated every single day? Of course not. They're tired. They're sore. Some days they don't want to be there. But they go anyway. Not because of motivation. Because of momentum. They've built so much momentum through 5 years of consistent choice that not going would feel wrong. The momentum is stronger than the resistance. The momentum is carrying them forward, regardless of how they feel in any given moment. That's power. That's sustainable. That's how you transform. Compare that to the person who works out for a month, waiting for motivation to sustain them. By week 3, the novelty wears off. The motivation fades, and suddenly they're not sure if this is worth it. They stop. They start over 3 months later when motivation returns. But momentum never builds because they keep stopping. Motivation is temporary. Momentum is permanent. Build momentum and motivation becomes optional. Here's the insight. You don't need to feel motivated. You need to build momentum. And momentum is built through showing up when you don't feel like it. Momentum is built through the days when motivation has completely checked out and you do it anyway. The person who understands this doesn't struggle with motivation. They struggle with one thing, building momentum. And they know exactly how to build it, through small, consistent decisions, day after day, regardless of feeling. And once momentum is built, the game is completely different. Now they're not fighting resistance. They're riding momentum. And momentum is exponentially more powerful than motivation. You have a choice. You can chase motivation and keep starting over. Or you can build momentum and become unstoppable. Motivation will fail you. It always does. But momentum never fails. It only grows stronger through consistent choice. Closing and transition. You now understand the compounding mechanism. You understand that small decisions compound into unrecognizable transformation. You understand that there's an invisible threshold where accumulated small choices suddenly become visible identity. And you understand that momentum, built through consistency, is far more powerful than motivation, which is temporary. Small decisions feel insignificant until they don't. Then they feel like destiny. Thresholds aren't moments. They're invisible lines you cross through 1,000 small steps. Then suddenly you're on the other side and you never go back. Motivation is temporary. Momentum is permanent. Build momentum and motivation becomes optional. These are the truths that sustain transformation. Because once you understand compounding, you stop looking for big breakthroughs. You stop waiting for the one moment that changes everything. You understand that the one moment that changes, everything is made of 1,000 small moments that changed nothing. Individually, but everything collectively. But here's what happens. When you start building momentum, you start making aligned decisions. You start seeing your life shift. You start feeling more powerful. And then something unexpected happens. You start to question who you are. Because the version of you that's emerging is different from who you've been. That identity shift is where real transformation lives. Because it's not just about doing different things. It's about becoming someone different. And once that happens, stopping would betray who you've decided to become. That's the next layer. How to reprogram your identity itself. How to stop fighting who you think you are and start becoming who you decide to be. That's Chapter 6, The Identity Override. How to reprogram who you think you are. Chapter 6, The Identity Override. How to reprogram. Who you think you are, I'm about to tell you something that will either liberate you or terrify you. Probably both. You're not broken. You're not limited. You're not stuck with who you are. You're trapped by who you've decided to be. And here's the thing. You can change that decision. Right now, today, this moment. Most people think identity is fixed. They think, I'm not a morning person. Like it's written in their DNA. Like some people are born morning people and some people aren't. Like it's destiny. But it's not. It's a decision you made. And you've made it so many times it feels like truth. But it's not truth. It's habit. The same goes for everything. I'm not disciplined. I'm not creative. I'm not good with money. I'm not athletic. I'm not social. These aren't facts about you. These are identities you've constructed through repeated decisions. And if you constructed them, you can deconstruct them. You're not trapped by your identity. You're trapped by how many times you've decided it. That's the breakthrough. Because the moment you realize you're not trapped, you're just repeating a pattern, everything changes. Because patterns can be interrupted. Patterns can be reprogrammed. Identity can be overridden. This chapter is about how to do it. Part 1. You're not broken. You're just identified with the wrong version. Let me ask you something. When you say, "I'm not a morning person," where did that come from? You didn't wake up on your first day of life and inherently know you weren't a morning person. You learned it. You developed that identity through decisions. You hit snooze repeatedly. You slept in consistently. You trained your brain to believe, "I'm the kind of person who doesn't wake up early." And now that belief feels like fact, but it's not fact. It's programming. And you're the programmer. The person who says, "I'm not creative," made decisions that supported that identity. They stopped trying new things. They stopped exploring. They told themselves they weren't creative, and that belief became self-reinforcing. Now they avoid situations that require creativity because they've identified with being non-creative. But here's the truth. Creativity isn't something you are or aren't. It's something you do or don't do. The person who does creative work becomes creative, not because they're special, but because they've decided they're the kind of person who creates. You're not trapped by your identity. You're trapped by how many times you've decided it. This is actually liberating, because if you're trapped by how many times you've decided something, then you can escape by deciding differently. Just as many times, just as consistently. Real example. The person who decides to be a morning person doesn't wake up one day magically transformed into a morning person. They decide, they wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. It's hard. It feels wrong. But they do it. They set an alarm. They get up. They suffer through it. Day 1 is brutal. Day 2, they do it again. It's still hard, but marginally less hard because their brain is starting to recognize a pattern. Day 3. Day 4, day 5. Each day it's still difficult, but the difficulty is decreasing. The pattern is strengthening. Their brain is beginning to accept, okay, apparently, this is what we do now. By day 15, something shifts. Their body starts expecting it. They might even wake up 5 minutes before the alarm. Not because they've suddenly become a morning person, but because they've made the decision 15 times. 15 times is enough to start rewiring. Day 30. The threshold. Something fundamental changes. Waking up early doesn't feel like them forcing themselves to do something foreign anymore. It feels like them being themselves. The identity has shifted. They're not a person trying to be a morning person. They're a morning person. The shift isn't gradual from day 1 to day 30. It's sudden around day 30. Like flipping a switch, and here's the crazy part. On day 31, if they tried to sleep in until 8 a.m., it would feel wrong. Their body would reject it. Not because they're disciplined, but because they've reprogrammed who they are. That's the key. You don't fix identity through willpower or motivation. You reprogram it through repeated decision. You decide once, then you decide again, then again, then again, until one day, not deciding feels wrong because you've decided so many times that you've become someone different. The person who says, "I'm not athletic," has made thousands of decisions not to train. They've identified with being non-athletic through consistent choice. But if they made 365 consecutive decisions to train, they would become athletic, not through some magical transformation, but through the accumulated identity shift of repeated choice. You're not broken. You're just identified with the wrong version, and identification can be changed. Identity can be overridden. Part 2, the 30-day identity. Shift. I'm going to give you a specific number. And this number is going to be the threshold between who you think you are and who you're actually becoming. 30 days. Now, I'm not saying this is scientifically precise. There's no magic in the number 30, but there's psychology in it. Genuine, real, psychological transformation. When you make the same choice for 30 consecutive days, something shifts inside you. Your neural pathways are rewiring. Your brain is literally changing. The person you thought you were, the identity you've held on to, starts to feel like fiction. And the person you're becoming starts to feel like inevitability. Real example. Cold showers. Terrifying on day one. You stand in front of the shower, and everything in you screams, no. This is wrong. This is torture. This is unnecessary. But you do it anyway. You step in. The cold hits. Your body spasms. Your breath catches. And you're in there for 60 seconds that feel like an hour. Day one feels like you doing something foreign to yourself. It feels like violation. It feels like you're forcing yourself to be someone you're not. Day 5. It's still hard. Still shocking. But your body has started expecting it. Your nervous system is beginning to adapt. Day 15. Something's different. The cold doesn't seem as cold. Your body tenses for a moment, but then relaxes. You're starting to feel alive in the shower instead of tortured. Day 25. The cold is almost refreshing now. You're not white-knuckling it. You're not suffering through it. You're experiencing it. Your identity is shifting. You're becoming someone who takes cold showers. Not someone trying to take cold showers. Someone who does it. Day 30. The threshold. The next morning, you wake up and you actually want the cold shower. Not because it got less uncomfortable, but because you've identified with being the kind of person who takes cold showers. Not taking it would feel wrong now. Would feel like betraying who you've decided to be. And here's what's wild. After day 30, you can't go back. Not easily anyway, because you've reprogrammed yourself. You've told your identity, this is what we do now. And your identity has accepted it. Days is the threshold where the new decision becomes your new identity. After that, not doing it feels wrong. This applies to everything. 30 days of writing, 30 days of the gym, 30 days of learning, 30 days of whatever you want to reprogram yourself to do. The magic isn't in the cold shower or the writing or the training. The magic is in the 30 consecutive days of the same choice. That's the threshold where habit becomes identity, where doing becomes being. Most people try for 5 days, 10 days max. And when it's still hard, they think, this isn't working. I'm not cut out for this, but they're quitting too early. They're quitting before the threshold. They're quitting before the identity shift happens. The person who makes it to day 30 is no longer forcing themselves. The person who makes it to day 30 has become someone new. And that new person doesn't need willpower. That new person just is. You have a choice. You can quit before the threshold and stay who you've always been. Or you can commit to 30 consecutive days and reprogram yourself. But you have to understand, the first 20 days are hard because you're fighting your old identity. The last 10 days are when the new identity is taking hold. And by day 30, the fight is over. You've won. You've reprogrammed. Part 3. The rejection framework now. Here's something that seems counterintuitive but is actually the most powerful reprogramming tool available. You don't build new identity by adding. You build it by rejecting. Most people try to reprogram themselves by forcing the new identity. I'm going to become disciplined. So they white-knuckle it. They force themselves to be disciplined. It's exhausting, because they're still identifying with being undisciplined and then trying to override that identity with willpower. But what if you approached it differently? What if instead of forcing the new identity, you simply rejected the old one? Instead of, I'm becoming disciplined, what if you just said, I'm not the kind of person who wastes time anymore, not forcing anything, just rejecting what you used to be? Instead of, I need to start writing, what if you said, I'm not someone who has dreams I don't pursue, not adding anything, just rejecting the identity of someone who's all talk? The rejection framework is simpler, it's more sustainable, and it's more powerful. Real example, the person trying to quit soda, usually they approach it as, I need to have willpower, I need to resist, I need to be strong enough to say no to soda. So they're using willpower. And willpower is finite. One day they'll be tired. One day they'll be stressed. One day they'll cave. Because they're still identifying as someone who drinks soda. They're just forcing themselves not to. But the person who uses the rejection framework, they simply say, I'm not a soda drinker anymore. Not, I'm trying not to drink soda. Not, I'm resisting soda. Just, that's not who I am. And when someone offers them soda, they don't have an internal battle. They just say no, because they've rejected that identity. I'm not a soda drinker is who they've decided to be. Soda conflicts with that identity. So the choice becomes automatic. Not hard, automatic. You don't build new identity by adding. You build it by rejecting who you refuse to remain. This is the deepest reprogramming. Because it's not about becoming something. It's about refusing to be something. And refusal is stronger than aspiration. Refusal is cleaner than willpower. Every time you face a choice that represents the small version of yourself, you simply say no. Not no, I'm choosing the growth option, though that's fine. Just no, that's not who I am anymore. The small version scrolls mindlessly. Evolved self rejects it. I'm not someone who wastes time on infinite content anymore. The small version complains about circumstances. Evolved self rejects it. I'm not someone who blames the world for my problems. The small version stays in bed when the alarm goes off. Evolved self rejects it. I'm not someone who breaks promises to myself. Each rejection is a reprogramming. Each no to the old identity is a confirmation of the new one. And these accumulate, day after day of rejecting the small version, until one day the small version isn't even an option anymore. You've rejected it so thoroughly that it's not part of your identity anymore. You don't build new identity by adding. You build it by rejecting who you refuse to remain. This is why the 30-day threshold works so well with the rejection framework. You spend 30 days saying no to the old identity and yes to the new one. By day 30, the old identity feels foreign. The new one feels inevitable. Closing and transition, you now have the tools to reprogram your identity. You understand that identity isn't fixed. It's constructed through repeated decision. You understand that 30 consecutive days of the same choice can reprogram who you are at a fundamental level. And you understand that rejection is more powerful than aspiration when it comes to building new identity. You're not trapped by your identity. You're trapped by how many times you've decided it. Days is the threshold where the new decision becomes your new identity. After that, not doing it feels wrong. You don't build new identity by adding. You build it by rejecting who you refuse to remain. Write these down, because these are the statements that will guide your reprogramming. These are the truths that will carry you through the first 30 days when it's hard and feels foreign. But here's what happens after you reprogram your identity. You start to feel something new. You start to feel power. You start to feel certainty. You know who you are now because you've decided and decided and decided until the decision became identity. But power without direction is just chaos. Identity without clarity is just noise. So the next step is understanding what you're actually willing to be uncomfortable for. Because not all discomfort strengthens you. Some discomfort just breaks you. And you need to know the difference. That's Chapter 7. The Discomfort Ranking. A hierarchy that reveals your real priorities. Chapter 7. The Discomfort Ranking. A hierarchy that reveals your real priorities. You're lying to yourself, and you know it. You say you want to be healthy, but you won't endure the discomfort of training. You say you want to be successful, but you won't endure the discomfort of learning. You say you want to be confident, but you won't endure the discomfort of vulnerability. You say you want a lot of things, but your actions say you want comfort more. Here's what I need you to understand. What you say you want is irrelevant. What actually matters is what you're willing to be uncomfortable for. because that's where truth lives. Not in your words, not in your goals, not in your plans. Truth lives in what you'll endure discomfort for, what you're willing to suffer for, what you're willing to be wrong for, what you're willing to look foolish for. That's your actual priority. That's what you actually believe in. Discomfort doesn't reveal what's hard. It reveals what matters. What you're willing to be uncomfortable for is what you actually believe in. And most people are shocked when they do this audit, because their actual priorities are so different from their claimed priorities. They thought they wanted success, but they won't endure the discomfort of learning. They thought they wanted relationships, but they won't endure the discomfort of vulnerability. They thought they wanted transformation, but they won't endure the discomfort of being wrong. So the question isn't, what do you want? The question is, what are you willing to be uncomfortable for? Because that's your real answer. Part 1. Discomfort reveals what you actually believe. Let me give you a harsh truth. It sounds mean, but it's the most loving thing I can tell you. If you're not willing to be uncomfortable for something, you don't actually want it. You think you want it. You've convinced yourself you want it, but you don't actually want it. Because if you wanted it, you'd be willing to endure discomfort for it. Real example. The person who says they want to be a writer but won't sit down and write. They talk about the book they're going to write. They think about the book. They plan the book. But they won't actually write the book. They won't endure the discomfort of facing a blank page and their own inadequacy. Now here's the truth. They don't want to be a writer. I know that sounds harsh, but think about it. If they wanted to be a writer, they'd write. Not eventually. Now. The want would be stronger than the discomfort. But it's not. The discomfort is winning, so they don't actually want it. The person who writes through discomfort? That person wants it. They sit down and write badly. They write inconsistently. They write through fear and doubt and the certainty that they're not good enough. But they write anyway, because wanting to be a writer is stronger than the discomfort of the process. Discomfort doesn't reveal what's hard. It reveals what matters. What you're willing to be uncomfortable for is what you actually believe in. This is the audit that changes everything. Because once you understand this, you can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't claim to want something while refusing to endure discomfort for it. Either you want it, in which case you'll be uncomfortable for it, or you don't want it and you're just comfortable talking about it. The person who claims they want to be healthy but won't wake up early to train. They don't want health. They want the idea of health. They want the status of being healthy. But they don't want it enough to endure the discomfort. The person who claims they want to be successful but won't endure the discomfort of learning, of being wrong, of being rejected. They don't want success. They want the fantasy of success. They want the feeling of accomplishment without the discomfort of achievement. You have a choice. You can claim you want something while refusing to endure discomfort for it. That's safe. That's comfortable. You get to feel like you want something big without having to actually do the hard work. But you also have to live with the gap between who you want to be and who you actually are. Or you can be honest. You can look at what you're actually willing to be uncomfortable for. And you can admit, that's what you actually want. Not what you say you want. What you're willing to suffer for. And here's where it gets interesting. Because once you're honest about what you actually want, you can make different choices. You can say, okay, I'm not actually willing to be uncomfortable for health. So health isn't my priority. That's okay. My priority is comfort. So let me stop pretending and start being honest about that. Or you can say, wait, I want health more than I realized, but I'm not being uncomfortable for it. That means I need to change my actions. Not my words, my actions. That honesty is where transformation begins. Part 2. Ranking your discomforts. Now here's what most people miss. They think all discomfort is the same. They think all suffering is equal. But it's not. Some discomfort builds you. Some discomfort just breaks you. Some suffering strengthens you. Some suffering just harms you. And you need to learn the difference. Because if you're going to be uncomfortable, you need to be uncomfortable for something that matters. Real example. The discomfort of waking up early to train. That's a discomfort that builds you. It's hard. Your body resists. But every time you push through it, you're rewiring yourself. You're building identity. You're strengthening your capacity. You're becoming someone more capable. The discomfort compounds into something good. Now compare that to the discomfort of staying in an unhealthy relationship. That's also discomfort. Leaving would be discomfort, but staying is also discomfort. Different kind. The discomfort of staying is breaking you. It's eroding your confidence. It's teaching you that you're not worthy of being treated well. It's compounding into something bad. Both are discomfort, but one builds and one breaks. One reveals priority and one reveals tolerance for harm. Not all pain is discipline. Some pain is just poor boundaries. The same goes for discomfort. Choose your discomfort wisely. This is the framework that prevents wasted suffering. Because there's a lot of people suffering and calling it discipline. They're staying in situations that are breaking them and calling it commitment. They're enduring things that are harming them and calling it growth. But growth discomfort and harm discomfort are different. Here's how to tell the difference. Growth discomfort has an endpoint. You train hard today and you recover. You face your fear today and you become braver. You do the hard work today and you grow. The discomfort is temporary. The result is permanent. Harm discomfort is ongoing. The unhealthy relationship doesn't get better. The toxic job doesn't get better. The abusive situation doesn't get better. The discomfort continues forever because the situation is broken. The discomfort is permanent. The result is damage. Growth discomfort makes you proud. When you've pushed through growth discomfort, you look back and think, I'm glad I did that. That was worth it. The memory of the discomfort is connected to the memory of becoming. Harm discomfort makes you ashamed. When you've endured harm discomfort, you look back and think, I shouldn't have stayed that long. I shouldn't have tolerated that. The memory of the discomfort is connected to the memory of losing yourself. Not all pain is discipline. Some pain is just poor boundaries. The same goes for discomfort. Choose your discomfort wisely. So here's the ranking system. When you're facing discomfort, ask yourself, does this discomfort have an end point, or is it infinite? Does this discomfort strengthen me, or does it erode me? Will I be proud of this choice, or ashamed? Am I becoming someone I respect, or am I tolerating something I shouldn't? If the answer is endpoint, strengthen, proud, respect, then it's growth, discomfort. Lean into it. That's where transformation lives. If the answer is infinite, erode, ashamed, tolerating, then it's harm, discomfort. Run from it. That's where you waste yourself. You're going to be uncomfortable. That's not the question. The question is whether your discomfort is building you or breaking you. And you need to choose wisely. Because suffering isn't noble if it's pointless, and endurance isn't strength if it's keeping you stuck in the wrong place. Part 3. When discomfort becomes normal now. Here's what happens when you've chosen your discomforts wisely, and you've been willing to endure them consistently. The discomfort doesn't go away. That's not what happens. That's a myth. People think, if I just push through enough, the hard thing becomes easy. Not really. The hard thing doesn't become easy. It becomes normal, and that's actually more powerful than easy. Real example. The entrepreneur's first pitch is terrifying. They're standing in front of investors. Their hands are shaking. Their voice is uncertain. Everything in them is screaming that they're not ready. They're not prepared. They're going to fail. The 10th pitch? It's not that the discomfort is gone. It's that it's normal now. The pitch is a conversation, not a performance. Not a test, just a conversation. The 100th pitch? It's routine. The entrepreneur's pitch, and it's like breathing. Not because the high stakes disappeared, But because the entrepreneur has been uncomfortable so many times that uncomfortableness is just the baseline for who they are now. Discomfort doesn't disappear. It just becomes the baseline for people like you. This is crucial to understand. Because if you're waiting for growth discomfort to feel comfortable, you're waiting for something that never comes. Growth lives in the uncomfortable territory. Excellence lives there. Transformation lives there. And if you're waiting for it to feel easy, you're waiting forever. But the person who understands that discomfort becomes normal, they operate differently. They know that every new level of growth will be uncomfortable. And that's okay. That's expected. That's not a sign they're doing it wrong. That's a sign they're growing. The person who says, "I want to speak publicly, but it terrifies me," is facing growth discomfort. Public speaking is terrifying the first time, and the 10th time, and maybe the 100th time, but the discomfort becomes the baseline. It's normal. It's what people like them do. The person who becomes a master speaker didn't stop being nervous. They became someone for whom nervousness is normal, for whom discomfort is the price of doing what matters. The person who becomes a confident person didn't stop feeling vulnerable. They became someone for whom vulnerability is normal, for whom being seen and judged is just the risk you take for having an authentic life. The person who becomes someone who takes risks didn't stop feeling fear. They became someone for whom fear is normal, for whom the discomfort of uncertainty is just the foundation of all growth. Discomfort doesn't disappear. It just becomes the baseline for people like you. Here's what this means. You're not choosing between discomfort and comfort. That's a false choice. You're choosing between the discomfort of growth and the discomfort of stagnation. You're choosing between the discomfort that builds you and the discomfort that slowly kills you from the inside. Stagnation is discomfort too. You just don't feel it as intensely in the moment, but it compounds. It accumulates. It becomes a lifetime of quiet desperation. That's discomfort. It's just numb discomfort, slow discomfort. Discomfort you get used to so thoroughly that you forget there's another option. You have a choice. You can feel growth discomfort today and become someone tomorrow. Or you can avoid discomfort today and feel stagnation discomfort every single day for the rest of your life. The growth discomfort is temporary. The stagnation discomfort is permanent. Only one of them leads to pride. Closing and transition, you now understand that discomfort reveals priority. You understand that not all discomfort is equal. Some builds and some breaks. And you understand that choosing growth discomfort means accepting that uncomfortableness becomes your baseline. Discomfort doesn't reveal what's hard. It reveals what matters. What you're willing to be uncomfortable for is what you actually believe in. Not all pain is discipline. Some pain is just poor boundaries. The same goes for discomfort. Choose your discomfort wisely. Discomfort doesn't disappear. It just becomes the baseline for people like you. These are the frameworks that will guide your choices. Because now you're not just enduring discomfort blindly. You're choosing it strategically. You're ranking it. You're understanding what you're actually willing to suffer for. But here's what happens next. You start making these choices consistently. You start building through growth discomfort. You start becoming someone different. And then you need to audit your life. You need to look at where you've been, how you got here, and what the cost of your choices actually was. Because understanding the power of your decisions requires looking back at the decisions that built you. It requires seeing the inventory of who you are and acknowledging that it's the direct result of what you've chosen. That's Chapter 8. The Legacy Inventory. Auditing the Decisions. That built you. Chapter 8. The Legacy Inventory Auditing. The decisions that built you and will build your future. Opening. Reframe life as consequences of decisions. Look around. Seriously. Stop listening for a moment and look around your actual life, your body right now. That's the inventory of your nutrition decisions and movement decisions. Not genetics, not luck. Your body is the accumulated result of what you've eaten and whether you've trained. That's it. That's the evidence, your bank account. That's the inventory of your spending decisions and earning decisions. Not luck, not circumstances. The money you have is the direct result of how many times you chose to spend and how many times you chose to invest. Your account balance is the public evidence of your private choices, your relationships. That's the inventory of vulnerability decisions and boundary decisions. How many times you showed up? How many times you stayed? How many times you risked being known? Your relationships are the living record of your willingness to connect. Your career. That's the inventory of risk decisions and learning decisions. How many times you pushed beyond comfort? How many times you said yes to opportunity instead of no to fear? Your career is the accumulation of whether you've been building or drifting. Here's the truth you need to face. Your life isn't what happened to you. Your life is what you decided about what happened to you. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're a collection of decisions. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's not blame, it's power. Because if your current life is built from past decisions, then your future life is built from decisions you're making right now, today, in this moment. You're not stuck. You're just making the same decisions you've always made. And if you change your decisions, your life changes. That's not hope, that's mathematics. Part 1. Your current life is the inventory of your past decisions. Let me be specific about this. Because vague understanding doesn't change behavior. Specific understanding does. The person with $1 million in net worth didn't arrive there through one decision. They didn't win the lottery. They didn't get lucky. They arrived there through 1,000 decisions to invest. 1,000 decisions to delay gratification. 1,000 decisions to build value instead of consume it. They made one decision repeatedly until the accumulated result was wealth. The person with $0 in savings didn't fail once. They made different decisions 1,000 times. Every time they had money, they spent it. Every time they had an opportunity to invest, they passed. Every time they could delay gratification, they didn't. They made one decision repeatedly until the accumulated result was scarcity. Same amount of time. Same circumstances. Different decisions. Different lives, that's the key. Your life is not mysterious. Your life is not random. Your life is not the result of fate or luck or destiny. Your life is the accumulated evidence of your decisions made public. Your fitness is the inventory of workout decisions. The fit person didn't get blessed with genetics that make fitness easy. They got disciplined with decisions. They made the decision to train when they didn't want to. 365 times. And now they have a fit body. The body is the evidence. The decisions are the cause. Your knowledge is the inventory of learning decisions. The knowledgeable person didn't have a magical brain that made learning easy. They made the decision to learn about one topic. Consistently, they read. They studied, they applied, they failed and learned more. They made learning decisions until knowledge accumulated. Your relationships are the inventory of connection decisions. The person with strong relationships didn't get lucky with people who liked them. They made the decision to be vulnerable, to show up, to invest time when they could have been alone. They made connection decisions until relationships formed. Your career is the inventory of risk decisions. The successful person didn't stumble into success. They made the decision to take the risk, to leave the safe job, to start the business, to have the difficult conversation, to pursue the opportunity, to fail in pursuit of growth. They made risk decisions until opportunity accumulated. Look at any life and you can trace it backward to the decisions. The body reveals nutrition and movement decisions. The account reveals spending and earning decisions. The relationships reveal connection and boundary decisions. The career reveals risk and learning decisions. You're not a mystery. You're the accumulated evidence of your choices. Your life isn't what happened to you. Your life is what you decided about what happened to you. Now here's where this becomes powerful. If your current life is built from past decisions, then your future life is being built right now. Not eventually, now. Every choice you're making today is a brick in the building of tomorrow's life. Every decision you're making this week is an architecture choice. You can't escape this. You can't opt out. You're either building your future intentionally or you're building it accidentally. But you're building it right now. With every choice, with every day, the question isn't whether your choices matter. They do. The question is whether you're going to acknowledge that your choices matter and start choosing intentionally, or whether you're going to pretend your life is happening to you and keep making accidental choices. You have a choice. Not about whether your choices matter. They do. The choice is whether you're going to architect your future intentionally or drift toward it accidentally. But the outcome is your responsibility either way. Part 2. Reverse engineering your future legacy. Here's an exercise that will change your perspective. And I want you to actually do this. Not just think about it. Actually do it. Don't look at your life right now. That's yesterday's decision. That's the accumulation of choices you've already made. It's done. Don't waste energy looking back. Look forward. Picture yourself at 55, or 65, or 80, whenever you imagine your end point. Picture the version of yourself that you're actually proud of. Not the fantasy version. Not the version that's unrealistic. The version that feels like destiny. That feels like inevitable if you actually commit. Who are they? What do they look like? How do they carry themselves? What's their confidence level? Who's in their life? What's their impact? How do people respond to them? Now here's the question. What decisions would that version of you have made today? Not eventually. Not when conditions are perfect. Today. In this season of your life. What would that person have read? What would they have learned? What conversation would they have had? What would they have said no to? What would they have said yes to? Real example. The version of you that you're proud of in 10 years? That version would be reading right now. Would be learning right now. Would be building relationships right now. Would be saying no to mediocrity right now. Not later. Now. So the actual question isn't, will I become that person? The actual question is, am I becoming that person today? Because there's no gap between who you want to be and who you're becoming. The gap is closed every single day through decisions. If the person you want to be in 10 years would be reading, then you need to read today. Not eventually. Today. If they would be training, then you need to train today. If they would be learning Spanish or starting the business or having the difficult conversation, then you need to do it today. Because the only way to become that person is to make the same decisions that person would make. Not someday. Today, your future self isn't waiting for you to arrive. Your future self is watching to see if you're becoming them right now. This reframes everything. Because now it's not about achieving a distant goal. It's about making one decision today that the person you want to become would make. That's it. Just one. Just today. Just what that person would do. Tomorrow, make that decision again. The next day, again. By day 365, you've made 365 decisions that your future self would make. And now you are that person. It's not magic. It's not fate. It's just the alignment of your daily choices with who you actually want to become. It's the closing of the gap between aspiration and action through repetitive decision-making. The person who's going to look back at their life with no regrets isn't the person who will wish they had lived differently. They're the person who's living differently right now. They're making the decisions today that their future self needs them to make. Your future self isn't waiting for you to arrive. Your future self is watching to see if you're becoming them right now. Part 3. The decision audit. Now let's make this concrete. Because abstract understanding changes nothing. Specific understanding changes everything. I want you to make a list. The last 10 significant decisions you've made. Not small decisions. Significant ones. Things that matter. Career decisions. Relationship decisions. health decisions, time decisions, money decisions, growth decisions. Write them down, all 10. Now for each one, ask yourself one brutal question. Did I choose this because it felt good today? Or did I choose this because it builds the person I'm becoming? Don't rationalize. Don't justify. Don't create a story that makes it okay. Just answer. Was it a comfort-based decision or a legacy-based decision? Go through all 10. Count how many were comfort-based. How many were legacy-based? That ratio is your answer. That ratio reveals whether you're architecting your future or drifting toward it. If 9 out of 10 were comfort-based, you're not architecting. You're drifting. You're making decisions based on what feels good today and wondering why your life doesn't match your dreams. But your dreams are built from legacy decisions and you're making comfort decisions. No wonder there's a gap. If 9 out of 10 were legacy-based, you're not drifting. You're building. You're making decisions that your future self needs you to make. And your life is going to be unrecognizable in 10 years. But not by accident. By design. Your life isn't a secret. It's just the accumulated evidence of your decisions made public. Here's what's wild. You can't hide your decisions. Your life is literally the public record of what you've chosen. The fit body reveals training decisions. The knowledge reveals learning decisions. The successful career reveals risk decisions. The strong relationships reveal connection decisions. There's nowhere to hide. Your life is the truth. And most people find this horrifying at first, because it means they can't blame circumstance. They can't blame luck. They can't blame timing. Their life is the direct result of what they've decided. That's terrifying for someone who's been blaming externals. But it's also liberating. Because if your life is the result of your decisions, then you can change your life by changing your decisions. You don't have to wait for circumstances to change. You don't have to wait for luck. You don't have to wait for permission. You just have to decide differently. You have a choice. You can keep making comfort-based decisions and wondering why your life isn't matching your dreams. Or you can start making legacy-based decisions and watch your life realign with your actual priorities. The inventory reveals the truth. And the truth is this. You're not living the life you want because you're not making the decisions that life requires. It's that simple. It's that clear. It's that fixable closing and transition. You've now audited yourself. You understand that your current life is the accumulated evidence of your past decisions. You understand that your future life is being built by your current decisions. And you understand that you can reverse engineer your legacy by making the decisions your future self needs you to make today. Your life isn't what happened to you. Your life is what you decided about what happened to you. Your future self isn't waiting for you to arrive. Your future self is watching to see if you're becoming them right now. Your life isn't a secret. It's just the accumulated evidence of your decisions made public. These truths should terrify and liberate you at the same time. Because there's nowhere to hide, but there's also infinite possibility. Your life can change. Not eventually, now through different decisions. But here's what happens when you start making different decisions. You start feeling momentum. You start building. You start making the choices that align with who you want to become. And then something clicks. The momentum becomes unstoppable. The small choices compound into undeniable transformation. And you reach a point where the old version of yourself is completely impossible. That's the threshold. That's the moment where discipline becomes destiny. That's Chapter 9. The Momentum Threshold, when discipline becomes destiny. Chapter 9. The Momentum Threshold, when discipline becomes destiny. There's a moment that most people never reach. It's the moment when everything changes, not gradually, suddenly, like flipping a switch. It's when discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. It's when the hard work stops feeling like hard work and starts feeling like breathing. It's when you cross a threshold and you realize you can never go back to who you were. Most people think they understand this moment. But they don't. They think discipline and destiny are different things. They think you have to choose between them. You have to choose between grinding now and living freely later. But that's not how it works. Discipline and destiny aren't opposites. Discipline is destiny that hasn't revealed itself yet. Discipline is the bridge you cross. And on the other side of that bridge is a completely different life. Here's what I need you to understand. The person on the other side of the bridge isn't living in discipline anymore. They're living in destiny. They're living as the person they disciplined themselves to become. And for them, there's no friction. There's no white-knuckling it. There's no forcing themselves. They're just being. Discipline isn't a burden you carry forever. It's a bridge you cross once, then you live on the other side. And that crossing, that threshold moment, that's what this chapter is about. Part 1. Discipline is the bridge. Destiny is the destination. Most people think discipline is punishment. They think it's something you endure for a while until you can finally stop. But that's not what discipline is. Discipline is the price of entry into a different life. Let me give you the sequence. You make a decision. You're going to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. That decision feels bold. It feels like transformation is one decision away, but then day one comes. You set the alarm. It goes off. And everything in you wants to sleep. The bed is warm. The day is cold. Sleep is easy. Waking up is hard. This is where discipline begins. Discipline is you choosing the hard thing when easy is available. That's it. That's discipline. It's not motivation. It's not inspiration. It's you choosing hard over easy. Day 1, you wake up. It sucks. It's brutal. Days 2 through 7, you wake up. It still sucks. Your body is resisting. Your brain is offering you 1,000 reasons why this is stupid, but you keep choosing hard. That's discipline. That's you. Weeks 2 through 4, something changes. The shock wears off. Your body starts expecting it. Your brain starts accepting, okay, apparently this is what we do now. The suffering decreases. The resistance lessens. It's not easy yet, but it's easier. By week 8, you've built enough momentum that the alternative, sleeping in, starts to feel wrong. Your body wakes up before the alarm some days. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're flowing with yourself. By week 12, the discipline and the identity have merged. You're not someone trying to be a morning person. You're a morning person. The discipline is gone. What replaced it? Identity. Being. Discipline isn't a burden you carry forever. It's a bridge you cross once, then you live on the other side. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The person on the other side of the bridge isn't constantly forcing themselves. They're just being themselves. The early riser doesn't force themselves to wake up. They wake up. That's who they are. The discipline built that person. But the person doesn't need discipline anymore. They just are. Real example. The athlete who's been training for years doesn't have to exercise. They're someone who exercises. Not in a forced way. In a natural way. In a this is what I do way. The discipline that built their body is no longer necessary. What replaced it? Identity. That's the threshold. That's the moment where discipline becomes destiny. That's when you stop doing the thing and you become the person who does the thing. Most people never reach this threshold because they quit before they get there. They think the hard part never ends. So they stop. They think discipline is forever. So they decide it's not worth it. But the person who understands this, the person who knows that discipline is a temporary bridge to a permanent transformation, they keep going. They know that weeks 1 through 4 are the hard part. They know that weeks 5 through 12 are the transition. And they know that week 13 onwards is just being, so they endure the hard part. They cross the bridge, and then they live on the other side. That's the key. Discipline isn't forever. Discipline is just the time before you've become someone different. It's the construction phase. And once construction is done, You Just Live in the Building, Part 2, The Tipping Point of Internal Motivation. Here's what happens at the threshold that's even more powerful than the identity shift. Your motivation changes. Not just your identity. Your entire motivation system rewires. In the beginning, you're motivated by external things. You want to be fit so people think you're attractive. You want to be disciplined so people respect you. You want to wake up early so you feel productive. The motivation is external. It's about how other people perceive you or how you want to be perceived. This motivation works for a while, but it's fragile. Because if nobody notices, the motivation disappears. If the external reward doesn't materialize, you question why you're doing this. You quit, but something changes at the threshold. Somewhere around day 60 or 90 of consistent choice, something shifts internally. You're not doing it for external validation anymore. You're doing it because not doing it would betray who you've decided to become. The artist doesn't create because they want to sell art. They create because the act of creating is part of who they are. Not creating would feel like betraying themselves. The external validation, the sales, the recognition, that's not why they're creating. That might be nice, but it's not the reason. The reason is internal. The reason is identity. The athlete doesn't train because they want trophies. They train because their body demands it. Their identity demands it. Not training would feel wrong, would feel like giving up on who they are. The external reward, the trophy, the recognition, that's nice. But it's not the motivation. The motivation is internal. It's integrity. It's being who they've decided to be. External motivation is the training wheels. Internal motivation is the bicycle. At some point, you have to trust the bike. This is the shift that transforms everything. Because when your motivation is external, you're fragile. You're dependent on outcomes and perceptions and feedback. But when your motivation is internal, you're unstoppable. Because the outcome doesn't matter. The perception doesn't matter. What matters is being the person you've decided to be. Real example. The person motivated externally wakes up at 5 a.m. because they want people to think they're disciplined. But if nobody notices, if nobody praises them for it, the motivation dies. They sleep in because the external reward disappeared. The person motivated internally wakes up at 5 a.m. because they're the kind of person who keeps promises to themselves. Not because anyone's watching, not because anyone's going to praise them, because sleeping in would be betraying the person they've decided to be. And they won't betray themselves. Which person is sustainable? The one dependent on external validation, or the one powered by internal integrity? External motivation is the training wheels. Internal motivation is the bicycle. At some point, you have to trust the bike. The threshold is where this shift happens, where you stop doing it for the world and start doing it for yourself, where you stop doing it for recognition and start doing it because not doing it would be a betrayal. And once you're on the other side of that shift, you're unstoppable, because your motivation is internal. It's not dependent on circumstances. It's not dependent on feedback. It's dependent on one thing, who you've decided to be. And that decision is yours alone. You have a choice. You can stay dependent on external motivation, always needing recognition, always needing validation, always fragile. Or you can cross the threshold and discover internal motivation, where the only recognition that matters is the one you give yourself, the one built on the integrity of who you've decided to be. Part 3. The cascading effect. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because the threshold doesn't just apply to one area of your life. The threshold cascades. Once you've crossed it in one area, it starts cascading to other areas. And your entire life transforms. Not because you're trying so hard, but because momentum is carrying you. Real example. The person who disciplines themselves to wake up at 5 a.m. That's the first threshold they cross. They've built one discipline, waking up early, but now they have 2 extra hours. What do they do with that time? Probably something productive. Maybe they work out. Maybe they learn, maybe they build. So now they have two disciplines. Waking up early and using that time productively. The first discipline created the space for the second. The person who's waking up early and working out consistently now has a different body. They have more energy. They have more confidence. That confidence cascades. At work, they're more assertive. They take a risk they wouldn't have taken before. They pitch an idea. They ask for the promotion. Because the confidence built from physical discipline has cascaded into professional courage. Now they're advancing at work. Opportunity appears. They get the better job, the better role, the better paycheck, the better network. Everything is cascading. Each discipline creates the conditions for the next discipline. Each threshold crossed creates the momentum for the next threshold. And 6 months later, the person is unrecognizable. Not because they tried harder, but because momentum is carrying them at a speed that feels like transformation. One discipline compounds into a life. Start anywhere. Momentum does the rest. Here's what's crucial. They didn't try to fix everything at once. They didn't try to become fit and successful and confident and wealthy all at the same time. They started with one discipline, waking up early. And from there, momentum did the rest. The person who wakes up early becomes productive, becomes the person who's moving forward, becomes the person who has opportunity, becomes the person whose entire life is different. It's not magic. It's mathematics. One discipline creates space and energy for the next. The next creates momentum for the next. The momentum compounds. And suddenly, you're operating at a completely different level. But here's what kills it. People try to start too many disciplines at once. They want to wake up early and work out and eat healthy and learn and network and meditate and journal all at the same time. So they're overwhelmed. The momentum never builds because they're scattered. They burn out. But the person who understands cascading starts with one discipline. Master it. Let it create the conditions for the next. Let momentum carry them. One discipline compounds into a life. Start anywhere. Momentum does the rest. The threshold you cross in one area doesn't stay confined to that area. It bleeds into everything. Your confidence in the gym becomes confidence in the boardroom. Your discipline in training becomes discipline in learning. Your consistency in workouts becomes consistency in relationships. It cascades. And before you know it, you're not someone who's trying to transform. You're someone who's transformed. Not because you changed everything, because you changed one thing and let momentum carry you the rest of the way. Closing and transition, you now understand the threshold. You understand that discipline is the bridge you cross, not the burden you carry forever. You understand that at the threshold your motivation shifts from external to internal, and you understand that crossing the threshold in one area cascades into transformation across your entire life. Discipline isn't a burden you carry forever. It's a bridge you cross once, then you live on the other side. External motivation is the training wheels. Internal motivation is the bicycle. At some point you have to trust the bike. One discipline compounds into a life. Start anywhere. Momentum does the rest. These are the truths that carry you across the threshold. Because the threshold isn't reached through constant strain. It's reached through consistency. Through showing up. Through trusting that the bridge exists and crossing it even when you can't see the other side yet. But here's what happens once you've crossed. Once you've seen what's possible on the other side of discipline, once you've felt the momentum compounding, once you've glimpsed your future self who's already crossed, already transformed, already unrecognizable, you're at the final threshold. Not the threshold of discipline, the threshold of commitment. The moment where you decide, am I actually going to do this? Am I actually going to become this? Am I actually going to cross this bridge? Because everything up until now has been theoretical. Everything up until now has been understanding. But now you have to decide. You have to commit. You have to make the choice. That's the final chapter. That's the moment where everything becomes real. That's chapter 10. The decision today. You're challenged to become your future self. Chapter 10. The decision today. You're challenged to become your future self. You've made it this far. You've listened to everything. You understand the trap of comfort. You understand the power of legacy. You understand the decision architecture. You understand momentum and identity and compounding. You have all the knowledge. You have all the frameworks. You have all the tools. But knowledge isn't transformation. Understanding isn't action. And tools in your hand don't mean anything if you don't use them. So right now, in this moment, we're at the actual fork in the road. Not metaphorical. Actual. You have two options. Option 1, you finish this audiobook. You feel inspired for a few hours. Maybe you think about changing. Maybe you feel motivated. And then life happens. You get busy. You get distracted. And 6 months from now, you're going to be exactly where you are today. Same person, same life, same everything. And you'll remember this audiobook as something that felt good while you were listening, but didn't change anything. That's option 1. It's possible. It's likely. Most people choose this. Most people listen to inspiring content and do nothing different. And then they wonder why their life never changes. Option 2 is different. Option 2 is you make one decision. Just one, right now. The version of yourself you're becoming, the person you've been envisioning throughout this audiobook, that person would make a specific decision today. Not eventually. Not when conditions are perfect. Today. This moment. What's that decision? I don't know. Only you know. But you know. You feel it. You know exactly what that person would do right now. And you make it. Transformation isn't a moment. It's a series of moments stacked on top of each other until you're standing somewhere different. This chapter is about choosing option 2. It's about making the decision that transforms theory into reality. Part 1. The fork in the road is now. Let me be specific, because vague challenges don't work. You are at a fork. Right now, not eventually. Now. Left path, you finish listening. You feel good. You do nothing different. And your life stays exactly the same. Right path, you finish listening. You make one decision. You commit to it. And your life starts changing immediately. Here's what I want you to understand about the left path. The left path feels safe. It feels comfortable. You got inspired. You learned something. You're smarter now. You got value from the audiobook. But you didn't have to change. You didn't have to risk anything. You didn't have to be uncomfortable. The left path is what most people take. They consume content. They feel inspired. They do nothing, and they wonder why nothing changes. But here's the reality. If you do nothing, everything stays the same. That's not a mystery. That's mathematics. The right path is different. The right path requires you to identify the one decision that the version of yourself you're becoming would make today. Not would make if conditions were right. Not would make if I felt ready. Would make today. This moment, real example. The person who wants to become a writer. That version of themselves would write today. Not plan to write. Not prepare to write. Write. They would open the blank page and face their own inadequacy and write anyway. So the person standing at the fork has a choice. Left path. Think about writing and feel inspired, but write nothing. Right path. Write something today. Badly. Inconsistently. But actually write. The person who wants to become healthy. That version would move their body today. Not tomorrow. Today. Not start the gym next Monday. Today. So the person standing at the fork has a choice. Left path. Feel inspired about health and do nothing. Right path. Move your body in the next 24 hours. Walk, train, something, but actually move. You have a choice, but understand what you're choosing. You're not choosing between easy and hard. You're choosing between the person who stays the same and the person who transforms. You're choosing between comfort and growth. You're choosing between the version of yourself you are now and the version you could become. The person who chooses left path will feel good for a few hours. Then life returns. Then nothing changes. Then in 6 months they'll listen to another audiobook and feel inspired again and do nothing again. It's a cycle. It's comfortable. It's also tragic. The person who chooses right path will feel uncomfortable today. They'll do something that's hard for them. They'll face their own resistance. But tomorrow they'll be 1% different. And the next day, another 1% different. And by day 30, they'll be completely unrecognizable. All from one decision made repeatedly. All from choosing to cross the fork in the road, instead of standing at it forever. Transformation isn't a moment. It's a series of moments stacked on top of each other until you're standing somewhere different. Part 2. You're non-negotiable. Now let's get specific. Because general inspiration doesn't work. Specific commitment does. I want you to identify one thing, one non-negotiable commitment. The thing that, if you commit to it for the next 30 days, makes you impossible to stop. For some people, it's waking up at 5 a.m. That's your non-negotiable. Every morning for 30 days. No exceptions. That's the thing. For some people, it's writing. 500 words. Every single day. For 30 days. That's the non-negotiable. For some people, it's training. 30 minutes. Every day. For 30 days. That's the thing. For some people, it's learning. 1 chapter of a book. Every day. For 30 days. For some people, it's relationships. 1 meaningful conversation. Every day. For 30 days. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is this. It's the one decision that moves you toward the person you're becoming. It's the one commitment that, if you keep it, proves to yourself that you're serious. It's the non-negotiable. Here's the thing about a non-negotiable. It's not negotiable. It's not, I'll do this if I feel like it. It's not, I'll do this when it's convenient. It's not conditional. It's non-negotiable. You're committing to 30 consecutive days. No exceptions. No excuses. And here's why 30 days matters. Because at 30 days, something shifts. The new behavior becomes identity. The decision becomes who you are. The non-negotiable has become your normal. Real example. The person who commits to waking up at 5 a.m. for 30 days. Day 1 is brutal. Day 7 is still hard. Day 15 is getting easier. Day 22, something clicks. By day 30, waking up at 5 a.m. isn't a chore. It's who they are. It's their normal. Same with writing. Day 1 is terrifying. Day 7, you've written 3,500 words. By day 30, you've written 15,000 words. You're a writer now, not someone trying to write. Someone who writes, same with training. Day 1, your body rebels. Day 7, you're starting to feel it. Day 30, your body expects it. You're a person who trains now. This audiobook is worthless without one commitment. Not inspiration, commitment. What's yours? Right now. Not at the end of this chapter. Not after you think about it. Right now. What is your non-negotiable for the next 30 days? What is the one decision that you will make for 30 consecutive days? What is the one commitment that, if you keep it, proves you're becoming the person you're supposed to become? Say it out loud. Write it down. Make it real. Not in your head, out loud, out of your mouth. Because the gap between deciding and committing is where most people lose. They think about it. They consider it. They plan to do it, but they never actually commit. And commitment is the bridge between thinking and doing. You have a choice. You can think about changing, or you can commit to changing. But thinking and committing are different. Make the commitment now. Not after this chapter. Not tomorrow. Now. What is your non-negotiable? Part 3. The unshakable self is waiting. Now I want to tell you something that will either terrify you or liberate you. Probably both. There is a version of you that exists in probability. Not in fantasy. In probability. It's the inevitable result of the decisions you make between now and then. That version of you has made the uncomfortable choices that you won't make today. That version woke up early when you sleep in. That version said no to comfort when comfort was calling. That version pushed through the discomfort when it would have been easier to quit. That version is unshakable. They know who they are. They're not wondering if they're good enough. They know it. They're not questioning whether they can do it. They know they can. They're not negotiating with themselves about whether it's worth it. They've already decided it is. That version is waiting for you. Not in some distant fantasy. They're waiting in the inevitable result of your next 30 decisions. Here's what I need you to understand. That unshakable version of you is not some fantasy. They're not some impossible dream. They're the mathematical result of the commitments you make starting today. They're the natural outcome of your non-negotiable. If you commit to waking up at 5 a.m. for 30 days, the version of you that's waiting is the version who wakes up at 5 a.m. without thinking about it. That version is waiting. They're real. They're inevitable. If you commit to writing for 30 days, the version waiting is the writer. Not someone who wants to be a writer. Someone who is. That version is waiting. If you commit to training for 30 days, the version waiting is the person whose body is different, whose confidence is different, whose entire energy has shifted. That version is waiting. Your future self is already real. The only question is whether you're willing to build them into existence starting today. Real example. Right now, there are two versions of you existing in probability. Version A is 5 years from now. You listened to this audiobook. You felt inspired. You did nothing different. You're the same person. Same job, same body. Same life. You're wondering why nothing's changed. You're listening to another inspirational audiobook, feeling inspired again, about to do nothing again. Version B is 5 years from now. You listened to this audiobook. You made a commitment. You kept it for 30 days. One commitment became 2. 2 became 3. And now, 5 years later, you're unrecognizable. Not because you got lucky, but because you made a decision and you kept it. Then you made another, then another. And now you're living the life you envisioned. Both versions are possible. Both versions are real. The only difference is what you decide in the next 24 hours. The unshakable version, the one with confidence, with discipline, with the life you want. That version isn't waiting for you in some distant future. They're waiting for you to build them into existence through your commitment starting today. Your future self is already real. The only question is whether you're willing to build them into existence starting today. Here's what's wild. You don't have to become an entirely different person. You don't have to change everything at once. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to commit to one non-negotiable for 30 days. That's it. One commitment, 30 consecutive days. That's all it takes to cross into the threshold. And once you cross, momentum carries you the rest of the way. One commitment becomes easier. A second commitment becomes possible. The second becomes normal. A third appears. And before you know it, you're not trying to transform. You're transformed, but it starts with one commitment. It starts with choosing the fork in the road. It starts with deciding that the version of yourself waiting in probability is worth building. You have a choice. You can stay the same, or you can become. But becoming requires commitment. It requires you to say, the next 30 days, I am doing this. Non-negotiable. This is who I'm becoming. The unshakable version is waiting. They're real. They're inevitable. The only question is, are you going to build them? Closing. The final challenge. Extended CTA. You've now reached the end of the audiobook. But this is actually where the beginning begins. Everything you've heard, every framework, every concept, every truth, it's all useless without this moment. Without this decision, without you committing to one non-negotiable for the next 30 days. So let me ask you directly, are you going to do this? Not are you going to think about it. Not are you going to plan it. Are you actually going to commit? Because commitment is different from intention. Intention is easy. Commitment is hard. Commitment means you're going to wake up tomorrow and do your non-negotiable even when you don't feel like it. You're going to do it day 5 when the novelty wears off. You're going to do it day 15 when you want to quit. You're going to do it day 25 when you're close but not quite there yet. You're going to do it day 30 because you've decided. That's commitment. That's real. So here's my challenge to you. Make that decision now. Right now. Not after this chapter. Not tomorrow. Now. What is your non-negotiable for the next 30 days? Write it down. Say it out loud. Make it real.